Hello and welcome to Short and to the Point, where I review movies in 5 minutes or less, or your money back. So, what's the first movie you think of that's centered around cars? Not that. No, I'm talking about The Fast and the Furious 6, the newest installment in the completely absurd but entertaining as all heck series of car movies. Even though I've only seen The Fast and the Furious 5 and this movie. I'm working on the rest of the franchise, okay, people? I was never really interested until now due to, well, them not having a very high critical reception. But hey, what do I think of the movie? It's what you've come to expect from a summer blockbuster such as this. Heavy on the action with only the smallest traces of a plot to get us to the next action sequence. Not to say that the entire plot is without any merits. If you recall, in Fast and the Furious 5, Brian's girlfriend Mia got pregnant, and when she gives birth in this movie, that becomes the primary driving force for him to do what he does. Because let's face it, this isn't the kind of life that you want to raise a child in, and if you remember, he's still a blind man. So when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson appears to offer him and Vin Diesel a new job that they can do, he says, "We'll do it, but only if you give us all full pardons." Now, given that he's a cop, The Rock is initially hesitant to work with a band of criminals, but given how the villains in this movie are described as being the evil counterparts of Dominic and Brian's team, he relents and says, okay, fine, just do your job and you'll get your pardons, okay? Now, there isn't a whole lot to the characters per se. I mean, Paul Walker, he's pretty much reached the emotional peak of his character by this point by having a son. Vin Diesel is Vin Diesel, okay? There's not a lot to his performance, but his character is interesting nevertheless, and I like one of his lines, which is, you don't turn your back on family, even when they do. Because let's face it, if you turn your back on your family members, then what's going to happen to them? Well, that's not something anyone wants to know, because, well, you're family. Then there's Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris. Yeah, they are probably the least developed of our heroes, but they're a lot of fun to be around, so I say keep them around for Fast and the Furious 7. Now, as for the women, they are mostly eye candy, with the exception of Jordana Brewster and Michelle Rodriguez, as they do have small arcs to their characters. I mean, Jordana Brewster is now a mother, and Michelle Rodriguez's character, well, I can't get into that really without spoiling things, but it's interesting, and I think it works for this sort of film. And the villains, well, I like them better than the bad guys in Fast 5. They were just your run-of-the-mill goons and whatnot, and while the villains in this movie are still run-of-the-mill goons, they're at least memorable run-of-the-mill goons for the most part. They aren't just faceless mooks that get off by our heroes. They do make something of an impression. So, all in all, I say go see Fast and the Furious 6. The story might not be anything particularly engaging, but it still works. It's a nice advancement in the, well, what little of the story that I know. And it sets things up to finally tie in with The Fast and the Furious 3, which for some reason takes place at the end, but, well, you'll see for yourself when the movie comes out. I will see you all later, and adios. Breathe with me.